Welcome everyone back to the Divine Feminine Healers podcast. It is your host, Angelica, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with Sarah from Projector Movement on the podcast today. I am a fellow projector in human design, as I know a lot of you are in my community, as a lot of healers tend to be. And I'm just super excited to get into it today. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, something I ask all of my guests, which I think is so interesting because we each embody the divine feminine in very unique forms. I love to hear how you embody, or how does the divine feminine express itself through you?
Mm, that's such a powerful question. For me, it's actually been quite a journey and a uncovering over time. Briefly about myself, I came from working in the pharmaceutical industry for 10 years and was in a very, let's say, more masculine energy, go, 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 achieving. And also being a projector, we can tend to be very high achieving and actually much more in our masculine energy. And I would say over the last 8 years, I've been doing a lot of unwinding and deconditioning and slowing down.
Mm,
Things that have helped have been my reconnection to nature,
mm,
using my hands. I'm recently learning how to knit,
mm.
um, movement, dancing, getting more, aligning my mindset more to a yin mentality, if you will. So my movements of choice once were running and power yoga and high intensity type of things.
Mhm.
And now I'm moving more into restorative type practices. So really getting my rhythm and frequency recalibrated back to a slower rhythm, which projectors actually are innately wired to be, but we can be conditioned out of based on the frequency of the culture that we live in right now. So lots of different things.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love all of that. And I think it's so true as projectors, probably because we have so many open centers, we are so susceptible to society's conditionings and going into that high power mode. And it's like we're really good at being chameleons. So it's really easy to kind of fall into that and to feel how amazing it can feel to have success.
Totally.
Um, but like you said, I really like that you said bring a yin mindset, because truly, when I feel like I'm burning out or I'm away from my divine feminine, I feel it really takes that mindset first. It's not necessarily, maybe I'm incorporating more yin yoga and yoga nidra and things like this in my practice, which is amazing. But it's truly how I go about my day is just different. Like I'm slower, I'm more mindful. I can enjoy my food. It's like just the way I go about doing the things that I'm already doing helps me to be in that flow and that state of receptivity.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. The mindset gears the action from my experience, having that intention. And, I find I have a practice where when I catch myself kind of going more into that old programming of pushing, achieving, perfectionism, these kinds of more masculine energy type of mindsets, I gently try to remind myself back to that. It's just slower rhythm that honestly had been quite foreign to my existence, to my body, I feel, for the last 20 or so years. So it's relearning a language that's dormant within
Mm.
myself, within all of us, and kind of catching myself throughout the day when that old programming kind of wants to rev up, and not and using the old programming when I need it
Mm.
strategically, and then kind of pendulating between the two.
Mm. I'm so curious, coming from the pharmaceutical world, what was that spark or that wake up call that made you think this isn't what my body is meant to be doing anymore? And how did that transition into human design?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say from the age of 12 to 35, I lived outside of myself based on what I thought expectations from culture, family, society, um, from the college I went to then choosing to be in pharmaceutical sales was more of a I wasn't using my inner guidance. I was doing what I thought was the right thing to do, and a job that was lucrative and respectable. And the truth is, day one, I knew this intuitively wasn't for me. But, you know, throughout life, I was conditioned to, and my personal, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to support myself. And I got an opportunity right out of college. I landed a job in pharmaceutical sales, which was quite rare, and ran with it. And it took me 10 years to actually get out of it, because I was achieving all of the external validations of success. So the money, the condo on the beach in Manhattan Beach, these sorts, could travel, had flexible hours, and yet internally I was very sick, and physically. And what was the tipping point was I ended up refracturing my back and went on medical leave. And it was just kind of one of those breakdown moments that I feel like is actually quite common with projectors when we are living a life that life taught us to live, which is more of a generator lifestyle, that life tends to break us down in some capacity. And there was little breakdowns, and I was struggling with depression and stuff with my eating. And then when the back fractured, it was just kind of like, okay, I'm done. Like, I get it. I've hit every milestone that I thought was going to make me happy. There was temporary happiness, and I was still yearning. And I left Southern California behind. I moved up north. I entered into a school, California Institute of Integral Studies, known as CIIS, and I entered into a master's program that was called East-West Psychology. And at the time, I thought I was going to do more yoga therapy. That was, and truth be told, I actually didn't know what I was going to do. I just was like, this is acceptable to say I'm getting my master's degree. Like, I had 2 years to just figure it out. And through that program, my focus was actually studying Indigenous medicine and healing ceremonies from different earth-based traditions from around the world. And soon after was introduced to human design through the university, because coming from a science background, I was one that was like, oh, that stuff's like astrology. Like, what do you, like, there's no truth to that. Like, prove it, give me the science. And then when it was told to me I was a projector, my friend was like, you of every type need to really understand that you are quite different than the rest of the world. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I've always known that, but like, there's been no way to, there's no test a doctor can do, or there's no, diagnosis to this point of knowing I was different. And from there, I began to really dive deep in projectors. I also had a private practice at the time, and I started to bring in the human design chart with my clients. And it was like 85%, like you said, of my clients were projectors, what you were saying about the people listening to your podcast. And so it just had me dive deep, and my science background came in, and I've been really in this active studying of projectors and understanding more of the psychology. I'm not a human design expert in terms of reading charts, but I'm actually more interested in how we are very, very different, and there's common themes that we experience because life has taught us not how to be ourself, and we can suffer because of that, or it can feel different. And so, long answer, but that's kind of how I wove into the projector movement and human design.
I love that. I think it's so relatable. We always talk about on this podcast, a lot of healers, they come into, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner and do Reiki and energy healing, all that stuff. And so a lot of healers come into this world because their physical body is speaking to them, and they'll have that kind of tower, like tarot tower card moment where everything comes crashing down, and it's just like your body just simply cannot sustain this anymore. And it's kind of like a common theme that I have in my life as well. And I just it gives me kind of like a barometer. My body is, it's that measurement to understand where I'm at. It's just like such a great indicator. So I love that. I feel like that story, sometimes you get pushed into that suffering, but there's so much joy that gets on the other end of it, and it makes you more firm and trusting in what you've already known. Like you knew from the beginning, like you
Totally.
said, this wasn't what I was meant to be doing, but you didn't necessarily have the external validation. And so now that your body proved it to you, not that it needed to necessarily go through that, but it builds that trust more in yourself. So I know a lot of our listeners do know about human design, but can you give just a little brief rundown about what is a projector and some of those common themes? I definitely want to get into the psychology of it. I love that that's your expertise from it. So what are some of those common psychological themes that come up as projectors?
Okay, so human design is a system. I call it, it's almost like your individualized genetic imprint of who you are and your mission, your purpose, the way that you operate in the world. And it combines 5 different systems from all over the world, astrological systems plus metaphysics, which for me, I was like, okay, there's science, like there's science in there. It's not that I don't devalue astrology anymore. I highly, highly value it, but that's how my mind had to enter it. And it's a very complex system. You enter in the way you find your design is through your birth date, birth time, and city that you were born in. It's kind of like where the stars exactly were when you came into the world. And in a very basic, like the first level understanding of your human design chart is you are categorized into 5 different categories. So there are generators, manifesting generators, reflectors, manifestors, and projectors. Projectors, we are around 20% of the world, and we only started coming into this world a little over 250 years ago. And what makes up a projector is in the human design chart, there are different centers, 9 different centers, and the center that we don't have defined is the sacral center, which is, I call it the main gas tank for the body. So where you innately get energy. So 80% of the world wakes up every morning, they have a full gas tank, they can go out and they can execute their day and they feel really good and they go home and rest and wake up with a full gas tank. Projectors wake up and we have 20% of that gas tank. We are very open, which is challenging in a world that we have slogans like just do it or go big or go home or early bird gets the world, and the pace at which we're existing is faster than any other time on, I think, in the human realm. Humans have never existed this fast. So projectors existing now, we have been trying to keep up at a pace that is what causes us to be sick. And what makes projectors different is that we actually came here not designed to do the work that everybody else is here doing. So as you can imagine, one of the analogies I like, it's like projectors are fish and we've been trying to climb a tree our whole life. And it's like, okay, well, I can't climb that tree, and you can keep trying, but once you put that fish into the ocean, they're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. I feel really seen here. So we're here our purpose here, because we have an open sacral, or this energy center, is we are here to be the guides of the future. We can, I call it, have a 6th sense, which means that we are a bridge between energy. We are a bridge between understanding what somebody needs based on our interaction with them. So if I'm interacting with a person, I can feel in my being and I can see certain things that in this tangible reality we can't see. So we're here to guide people. We're here to usher in a new way of being in 2027. That's the gentleman who created human design spoke about the year 2027 as the year projectors will be the guides of the future. And I see slowly projectors are waking up to who they are, to come into that role, to do their work, which means to unlearn the way that life has taught them how to be. And that's partly what the projector movement is about. That's partly what I do with training and working with people is helping projectors reclaim who they've always been. And it's a beautiful process, and it can be a painful process too, because we've been trying to climb the wrong tree for a really long time.
Totally. Yeah, I see that pain and suffering as projectors clinging to this old identity of like maybe I thought I was this generator or this MG type of person, and having to change that reality can feel pretty confronting. And I love how you said it's really about tapping into their innate gifts of being a guide. Like they weren't meant to, it's not that they're not talented humans that they weren't meant to do, but their form of doing is different. It's in a way of being able to see that fuller picture and just step back. Like sometimes I would be in small circles and spaces where I felt like I was really safe and comfortable and I could share my wisdom. And then all of a sudden I would just, speak something and everyone was like, whoa, like where did that come from? Like I don't under like, and it just felt like it was something so beyond me. And to me, it kind of felt normal. But
Totally.
it really made me see like, wow, there's these extra gifts that I haven't been sharing because maybe I didn't feel like they were open or they were going to be accepted, or I was trying to be more in my doing than in my more of my guiding and seeing the fuller picture and sharing wisdom in that way. And I do think that that is something that's been really huge and a constant reminder I have to come back to for myself, being around a culture that's always do. I'm really curious to hear with some of the clients that you work with, what are some of those psychological reprogrammings that you need to work on with them?
Yeah. So I I I stopped doing one-on-one work now and mostly just do training. So, and in the trainings, when people are needing some one-on-one support, I'll work with them that way. But I would say, gosh, there's many. A lot of, so I'll just go right to the root of it. We've developed a lot of states, meaning our being starts to do things like people pleasing or perfectionism or overextending ourselves. And we started to do that at a very young age. So our orientation in this world at a young age has been about the other person always. Oftentimes it's because projectors we can feel the room, we can feel our surroundings. As a kid, when there was tension, whether it's with your sibling or with your parents, we naturally took care of them to make ourselves actually feel better. And we were good at it. So we learned very young to put our needs second. Oftentimes, because life, our schooling, our teachers, our parents didn't teach us how to take care of ourselves because they didn't know. No one told our parents or our teachers that we were this way. We have believed and adopted these states or these behaviors that we do to try and keep up with the rest of the world. So oftentimes I see projectors do perfectionism. They are heightened in trying to be perfect because if they're perfect, then maybe things would make sense in their being, or maybe they'll feel validated. And that perfectionism it's actually a trauma response. It's a fear-based response that it then ends up it taxes all types, but for projectors, because we're so open and sensitive, we don't have that same bandwidth to handle that type of pressure to be perfect. Or you have the people pleaser, codependency type of behaviors where instead of being with ourselves, we tend to try to make everybody else feel better. Or we're like, oh, let me help you here. Let me help you here, and drain our energy that way. Often another kind of more of the other side of the spectrum is I work with a lot of projectors because life is so overwhelming or they're so inundated. They tend to isolate, or they actually are shutting down or retreating because the world just feels so overwhelming. So one of my favorite strategies that I work with projectors, number one, is creating healthy boundaries, and even knowing what a boundary is. We talk a lot about, projectors, we have this functional range, which is way smaller than the rest of the world. and knowing what that range is. And when you start to go beyond it, how to then stop what you're doing and take care of yourself, incorporating things like pauses throughout the day, rest. We teach a lot about how anytime a projector is in connection with another human, that is working, is actually work. So recognizing how many human interactions can you have in a day before it's too much and you're self-sacrificing, or you're starting to have symptoms of fatigue, or your throat's starting to hurt. Or, I see a lot of projectors in the realm of autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, these neurological symptoms that tend to trace back to nervous system dysregulation. And life would be just life the way it is right now is dysregulating to the projector system in general. So if we don't know that, and we don't know how many, if I work with someone, I only see 1 or 2 people a day. If that's what I'm doing, if I'm doing a training, it's 1 training per day. That's my bandwidth. And that was totally opposite than the pharmaceutical sales, where I was seeing, 10 to 12 doctors a day and going and going. So a lot of it is, we do a lot of work with going back to being your younger self and understanding where we've developed some of the behaviors that we have that are causing us to feel disempowered in life, or sick or weak. And it's really, really powerful. And it's a lot of it, like I said, starts from being a young projector in the family, and not being, mom and dad not being like, okay, sweetheart, it's time for you to go and take a rest, or, after school rest and maybe do some art, or just go outside and play, instead of the pressures that we were given. Because we are quite wise and brilliant, and we can actually accomplish quite a bit. But it's usually at the detriment to our health.
Mm. Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel whenever I'm burnt out, it's almost hard to tell sometimes, just because my whole life I feel like I've been able to just overcome it. I feel like I
Yes.
could do anything. I'm
Yes.
invincible in that way. So it's like, where are my limits here? And I'm setting a new bar the more and more that I evolve, of I could do it, but what am I choosing to do? And what is going to really nurture that life force energy? And I love that you bring up the sacral chakra being open. It's so funny. Just studying the chakra system from the Vedic perspective, I work with a lot of women with blockages in the sacral and the throat chakra. And it's so related to everything that you're saying. The sacral chakra, when it's out of balance, it's when we're literally giving our energy away to other people. It's when we're not understanding what our needs and wants are. And when it's blocked in the throat chakra, it's being able to express those needs and wants with others, for example, and also being able to fully express what our dharma is, what really is our sole purpose that we want to bring into this world. And I think that that's where there's been a lot of shame with healers, of feeling like, oh, I need to step in my sole purpose, but they just want to feel that success of what it's like to really connect with the deepest part of yourself and get to share that gift with others. It really is the best feeling, but I find that it can feel so difficult, because we're comparing our journeys to a lot of other entrepreneurs or healers, and seeing how they're operating, and just realizing that we have to operate in a whole nother way. Like, of course, I think as a collective, no matter what your human design type is, we need to all pause a lot more than we're doing. Like, no one's taking any type of pause
No,
at all.
totally.
And so that's just naturally what nature does with us, at least every month, as we can see with the new moon, when the moon sheds completely. And from women, it signals to us at one time of the month we're supposed to at least rest, and we're not giving ourselves that. But projectors, on top of that, I find that I need even more than that. And there's so much guilt in taking the rest. And I've been doing this work for so long, but there's so much guilt in taking the rest, and other people not understanding, and all that stuff. So I would love to hear how you kind of break down projectors when they're feeling that guilt for taking that rest in for themselves.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. It's one of the toxicities within our culture, within the feminine being. Mothers feel the same way, right? And I to ask projectors, Does when a child needs rest, do you call them lazy?
Mm.
When a baby needs rest, are you like, oh, does the baby feel guilty? And again, it was programming. Had we been programmed with that's normal, there would be no guilt. And so it's first and foremost having compassion for the parts of ourself that have been operating with the belief that this means that I'm lazy or guilty or this sort of thing. And one of the main purposes of a projector's existence is to teach people how to be.
Mm.
And not through our speaking, it's actually through our essence. And it is the beingness that is what attracts the invitation. It is the feeling that I can lean back and be in life and not have to speak and not have to be seen, that I'm seen the most. And oftentimes I see projectors, rightly so. So here's another kind of human design nerdy thing, but we don't have a connection to the throat. We don't have a motor to the throat, meaning when we speak, we often aren't heard. We get over, and so because projectors can see things very, very clearly, we oftentimes will say things to people that haven't asked us our opinion, and we can really look to people. People can look at us like know-it-alls, or you're weird, or like it's almost like a repulsion because we haven't been aligned appropriately to know when the right time is to speak. And so many projectors come in with this desire to be seen because we're projectors, that we are supposed to be seen, we're these lights, but we're doing it from the lens of how life has taught people to be seen, which is through more of an egoic persona versus through that feminine essence. Projectors, we carry the greatest feminine essence of any of the designs. We are the most aligned to the pace of nature, mother nature of the feminine, which is finding that peace in the resting, finding that nourishment in not doing, in being. And that is one of the hardest things, even for myself at times, for projectors, because we tend to be very high achieving. We actually are extremely high achieving, and then we crash. And so I go back to the analogy I started with, you don't judge a child for needing a nap. You actually encourage the child to nap. The child needs that rest. And we are the same. And so it's to give ourselves, when we notice, a lot of deconditioning and shifting into alignment as a projector is noticing, oh, how interesting. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling guilty for saying no to this party that I really want to go to, but the truth is I'm tired, I just went to the grocery store, and that's actually really intense for a projector with a lot of people and a lot of lights. I may need to just lay down for 15 minutes, and I'm noticing that I'm wanting to just go to the next thing. Okay, thank you. I'm going to try resting for just 10 minutes and seeing if it helps. So it's incorporating a sense of compassion and curiosity into a new way, with not the you have to do that, that same sort of judgment. You're not going to judge your way to alignment. It's just being curious.
I love that perspective of just being in the being. I think that is truly a lesson that I come back to time and time again. And it's funny when I think about when I was a child and I grew up dancing in the performing arts, and I would just have random people come up to me and just say I'm so inspired by your performance. I'm a very young kid at this age, just very passionate and very theatrical. And I always remember that. And the same thing happens when I became a healer too. It's just people love following me just because they are inspired by what I do. And I need to remember that becomes part of your purpose of it's just you doing you and you just being you that gets to inspire other people. There's nothing else that you have to do about it. It's literally you just getting to live the life that you want to live, as long as you can decondition and separate it from what other people are living their lives and what you think success would look like, which is so hard. I mean, it's a constant evolution of deconditioning and shedding so many layers behind that.
Mhm.
And I'm curious to hear, you know, as projectors and like in building a business, I talk about spiritual businesses a lot in my podcast because a lot of my community is kind of like just starting out and
Mhm.
building their business. And I think that this is a really important conversation for that because if you're at the beginning of building the foundation of your business, you really get to lay out how you want to operate your energy so you can come from a place of abundance rather than lack. So I'm curious, you brought up this theme of waiting for the invitation,
Mhm.
which is a way that projectors are supposed to respond. I'm curious how waiting for the invitation works for you and your business. So you kind of touched on this earlier. You were like, I don't work one-on-one people, I work in group programs, and you kind of wait people to come to you. How does that work when you're, I don't know, let's say launching a program or something like
Yeah,
that? What is
totally.
more of that like practicality behind waiting for the invitation?
Yes. So there's so much in the human design projector world. What does that actually mean? From my understanding and what I operate on, waiting for the invitation is most important when it comes to work. So people that are working with you. Um, because the truth is, if it's your friends and they're asking for help, you should be getting paid. That's the also reality. Your wisdom, your guidance is your gold. It's your currency. So we don't just give gold away for free. And so when we first begin to realize that, that's another boundary. So I just wanted to say that. Now, if you're a projector and you are starting off, the way that we like to um, guide you, if you will, is instead of the marketing yourself, selling yourself, finding ways you can become discoverable. So in the world of blogs, podcasts, YouTube, social media, we suggest picking two platforms that resonate with you, what you feel most comfortable with, and offering information. So giving education, giving information for free as a way to be discoverable. So for example, if I have a podcast and I'm talking about this and this and this and this, and at the end of the podcast, there's an invitation to work, I'm offering this program. If you're interested, come along. But they are not, I'm offering information for people to then invite me into their world. So we can't just sit behind, a computer and hope people are going to come to us. We have to be in the world. But if it's through a channel of writing an amazing blog and someone reads your blog and they're like, wow, I really am resonant with this person, then you have your offering that they can then choose to exchange that with you or work with you in that way versus being on social media and promoting like join my 5-week program or whatever, or work with me here. That's more what a generator can do. So free information, free resources, education. If going to community events or things like that is something that feels good to you, going for the sake of being there and letting your aura speak. So it's not going there to solicit, but if someone comes up to you, and because we are designed as projectors, we don't get to say, oh, I want to work with this group of people. That's not how it works. It's who's coming towards you, your frequency, your aura is going to attract the people that can hear what you're having to say. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So if you're going to, any sort of community event or networking place, and you're showing up genuinely to be there, and people come up to you and genuinely are asking, oh, like, what is it that you're doing? Then you can share, but it wouldn't be to come and just explicitly like, look at me, this is what I do, this is what I do. It's going to read wrong energetically, and you're not going to attract the right person.
Totally. Those are some great tips for that. And it really just comes back to that embodiment of who you are, not needing to do anything other than that. And another theme that I've been exploring with this is understanding. So it's again, I'm noticing how my conditioning of congealing to other people's needs and wants
Mhm.
versus me getting to decide what I need and want and do. And so I wonder if you explore this too. Right now in my business, I'm thinking, how much of my business is it me curtailing to what my community needs and wants because I want to make sure that they're feeling held and seen, to what do I get to do? What are my gifts? What makes it so joyful for me to do? And just getting to share that with others.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not really a question in there, but just maybe a contemplation.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I'll answer it in a funny way. The quicker that projectors can be comfortable realizing that they are a square peg and the rest of the world is a round hole, and not trying to fit in with the rest of the world, and recognize we're different, recognize we're weird, we're quirky, we have all these different ideas on purpose. So when I can own that about myself and stop trying to, there is a fine line, I guess, but the more that I actually allow myself to be authentically expressed, the more life's actually going to give me more of what I'm looking for, because that's what we were here to do. Projectors came here to steer our culture in a new direction, and that is one much more of individual expression. And when you see human design charts, you see how innately, organically individual we are. So I would say, I say to projectors too, I hope that in 5 years you look back and what you're doing is totally different,
Mm,
because we're here to follow the universe's matching of us. So, I started going to back to school to be in East-West psychology, and then I moved into studying plant medicines and did my thesis on combo, and then all of a sudden human design entered my world, and now I was studying projectors, and then through projectors I'm also working in ceremony in a new way. But I followed a thread as I kept moving more towards things that turned me on.
mhm.
Then life kind of met me and was like, oh, what about that turn? And then I followed that turn. And maybe there were some terms that I went left and I was like, oh no, it's like GPS system, like go back, reroute. But the more authentic and the more, I don't like to use the word weird, but I've totally accepted I'm weird. Um, the more eccentric and different, the more you're expressed. And then that expression of fullness and aliveness is what the whole world is wanting to feel. And that's where they're going to come to you. So if you're just playing it like, okay, I want to just make it make sense to this community, or I'm like staying small a little bit,
Mm,
that's, know yourself, I didn't rip the Band-Aid off of who I was right away. It came over time, but I highly, highly recommend, you came here to do things and see things differently. So if we're not honoring what we're seeing as different or unique or a different direction, then we're cutting ourselves off of why we're here.
totally. I love that. Um, these are so great. I love all the concepts that we've broken down. Now I kind of just want to go more into the practicality of it all and maybe some projector tips and practices that you're really loving on,
Mhm.
or some that just feel important that you want to share with our community.
Yeah, totally. Well, what I just said, we are square pegs and the rest is the round hole, or whatever I said. We're not like everybody else. So stop trying to do that.
Mm,
And the more comfortable we can get with our weirdness, excuse me one second. um, the more that we can embody our truth here.
mm.
1 second, my
Oh,
cough is coming
okay.
back. Hmm. Um, I would offer for projectors to, as I said, that 2027 is a year where, I'll go backwards. Most projectors have been, I don't want to say ignored in life, but we've been typecasted as sensitive or weak or sick or these sort of things that aren't, our culture doesn't put those qualities on a pedestal. I was never, being called too sensitive wasn't this cool thing when I was a kid. It was like, oh, you're too sensitive. And so we have a lot of beliefs about ourselves, or have been imprinted with a lot of beliefs about ourselves. And I would say that right now, up until 2027, if you know you're a projector, it's here to do that work, to do your inner work, to decondition, like peeling layers off an onion, to come back into right relationship with yourself, and how to move throughout life in a way that no one has taught you, and heal. You know, the amount of tears I've cried and continue to cry, for being taught the wrong manuscript. You know, that was, life can be quite painful for everyone, but for projectors specifically, because of how different we are. So to have patience and time, but to really start to do that work so that your being is aligned when life calls upon us to be the guides. I would practically like work on your boundaries, and the quickest one is work on your ability to say no. That is something that is so hard for us, because we have been conditioned to be the friend that will answer the phone at midnight, or be the one that helps out mom and dad when they're in a fight, or do the extra, you know, counsel someone, or because we feel responsible, or that's how a lot of our relationships have been established. And, you know, the shadow side of the projector is we feel really good when we're helping people. So like, we do that often because life can sometimes not have us feel good. But the problem is we are, again, giving our gold away for free. So getting comfortable saying no, getting comfortable not going to everything you're invited to, getting comfortable, which I love and has made my life so much more rich. Projectors do best in one-on-one dynamics. So instead of going out with a bunch of friends, having a date with one person at a time, you'll get more, they'll get more, and your energetic resource won't be totally depleted. Incorporating the pauses throughout the day. That is so freaking hard. It sounds easy, but when we're on that like motor and we have all the things that we've got to do, stopping and just coming back into the body is a huge one. And incorporating a physical practice that you don't call exercise, because that to me already trips up this generating kind of mentality and competition in this, something that gets us in our bodies. Most projectors, I call us Pez dispensers, because we are like all up here and we are disconnected from the sensations of our body, and we are here to be embodied. And so whether it's walking outside or moving to your favorite music, doing things that are more feminine, that connect us to our body, connect us to ourselves. And lastly, as much as we can, spending time in nature. Nature is our healer. Nature is our cleanser. Nature can take, you know, as projectors, we take in our environment. So if we don't have a practice that we expel that energy, then we start to get sick or inundated or overwhelmed. And nature is one of the quickest and greatest ways that we can dispel and come back to ourselves.
Such great practices. I like want to say something about each one of them, but I'll just break it down a couple. Something I bring this up a lot. I long ago I went to a shaman and she gave me this great phrase saying, preserve your own sovereignty. And I really see that as our energy levels, as like you said, this gold nugget. And because it becomes part of how we get paid in life, you know, and that's also how we may be relating to people and on a daily basis, it's so important to preserve that and to hone it, and that you get to decide who gets a piece of that, who you get to share some of that light with. And the rest piece, you know, I think maybe off the bat, people may be thinking like, oh, I gotta take like a giant nap throughout the day, like that. My days just don't allow that. For me, sometimes it could be as simple as just taking like a 15-minute walk to literally go outside and just get out of my head and of that work mentality mode. And it's such a good reset. Like I'm always amazed at my resistance to doing a 15-minute break. And then also the results that I get after doing a 15-minute break is so profound. So Thank you for sharing all those tools and practices and all your projector wisdom. I know a
Mm,
lot of our community members, if they don't already haven't looked up their type, they're going to be looking at them up now.
yeah.
And I love following your Instagram. I think you have really great wisdom and bite-sizable tips that projectors can have. And like you said, we are different. We're only 20% of the population. So to feel seen and heard in your posts feels really comforting to know that,
Mm.
we're not alone and that we're kind of in this together, like this community that we're building. It's like we're here, we're in together. And I think that's really beautiful. So I'll have your Instagram linked below, the Projector Movement, for those who are not following already. And are there any other offerings that you'd like to share with our community?
Let's see. There are offerings that are starting next year. In January, our human design reader, so the person who actually goes in and tells you all about you, is offering a certified living your design course, which means if you are a healer or have a private practice and want to incorporate human design, she will be teaching you how to be a reader for your business. And we're still finalizing some of the trainings that we are going to be offering, but I believe right around March or April, we're launching an embodiment training on how oftentimes we see projectors when we learn about human design. Again, we go really deep into all the knowledge, but
Hmm.
that's step one, but step 2 through 100 after is embodying.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing that, and there may be in January or February, we may offer a relationships course. All of the ones I'm talking about are available, recorded already, but these are going to be coming up live. So if you go to our website, projectormovement.com, you'll see the current trainings. But I know for sure January will be a certified living your design course to learn how to read the charts.
Those all sound so wonderful.
Yeah.
I'll have that linked in the show notes. Yeah, I love each and every one of those. And yeah, relationships, that could be a whole other conversation that we have too.
Oh
So
yeah.
maybe we'll have you back on the
Oh,
podcast.
I would love to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. And
Yeah.
I know that your time and this is gold for you. So I appreciate you sharing your gold with us. And it's just been a nice, lighthearted and fun conversation. So thank you,
Thank
Tara.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time on the show.